Hey, Marco, it's great to have you on the Engage with Tech podcast with us, talking about decentralized AI. How you doing?
Thank you, Callum. Yeah, I'm doing fine, thank you. So it's been a busy week.
Yeah,
And that's what you get when your work has become your greatest hobby. So spending 7 days a week lately, and kind of enjoy it. So, and I'd like to end the week with a chat with you. So
perfect. Yeah,
basically,
yeah.
looking forward to this.
It sounds like you need a holiday, though, Marco, if I'm honest.
I
Seven
really
days a
do.
week.
7 days. I was just knackered, you
Yeah, I
know,
bet you were.
over
I
the
bet you.
weekend. So, but I'm glad. It's a good thing. The hype is a good thing because there's lots of demand.
Mm,
But the dark side of it is you have to work like a beast.
yeah.
So, um, but
You,
yeah,
you've got to constantly be up with it because it's changing all the time, right?
exactly. So I spend, I think, 1 to 2 hours whilst commuting in the
Mhm.
morning, trying to catch up, and then selecting which articles I want to read in the evening,
Yeah.
and when I'm lying in bed on my own, because otherwise it wouldn't have been allowed, I guess. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to do the reading for the next day.
Yeah.
So it's kind of sad. Yeah, I got a sad life.
But you
I'm
love
sorry.
it as well. You love it, so
I love it. Yeah, I love it. So, but it's just me and my wiener dog. So he doesn't complain. He doesn't
you
complain.
won't
Yeah,
complain.
yeah,
Love. Okay, so on the topic of decentralized AI, I mean, personally, I had to have a proper research about it before coming onto this podcast because I didn't know anything. But for our viewers, then, could you potentially explain just in layman's terms what it means?
yeah. Well, we all know big tech, right? So that's called centralized AI.
Yeah.
And centralized AI is when the AI, both the model, the place where it's hosted, so the compute, the data, the model itself, all the people in technology is all centered in one place. So that's what you call centralized AI. And with
Mhm.
centralized AI, you're basically dependent on that particular organization. So say Mark Zuckerberg or Zucky, he wants to, you know, pull a trick on you, he can decide to block you.
Mm.
And or if DeepSeek, for instance, wants to change the system prompts, and all of a sudden, Tiananmen Square has a whole different meaning than it did before, they can do it.
Mm.
And but decentralized AI basically means that the entire ecosystem, we're not talking about a central location, but we're talking about an ecosystem, is not owned nor governed by just one organization nor a person. So it's a federated construction. It's an ecosystem of players, both on the hardware side, on the OS side, models, GPUs, who together um, are in the game of building and operating an AI model. So decentralization has, a couple of advantages in that respect. Is that it doesn't make you dependent on big tech. What we've seen the last couple of weeks, right, is so maybe it's good to start off with a little story. It's quite fresh.
Yeah.
Before the weekend, I read this story about how Microsoft blocked. Microsoft's one of the bigger AI players in the market, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the bigger players. Period. They blocked the email address of one of the Supreme Court judges in The Hague because he did something which wasn't aligned with Trump's vision on Israel.
Hmm.
So he persuaded Microsoft to block his email.
Wow.
That is what you get when you're dependent on centralized technology,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether it's Chinese or Russian or American or German or from my country, which doesn't have a lot of centralized stuff anyway. But anyways, it's a big risk. So and that's why I became, some time ago, a fan of this decentralized model.
Sure. So you touched on it slightly then about the actual benefits of using decentralized systems. Could you maybe expand on that for me?
Yeah, sure. So a few things is, first of all, you have multiple players in that ecosystem. So it's not just one big data center with a supercomputer like, Grok's supercomputer, Colossus. Yeah. You've heard of Colossus, but it's a whole myriad of applications, AI applications running on hardware. It could be laptops, could be phones, it could be professional data centers, as long as it isn't big tech, right? As long as it isn't in the hands of just a billionaire, the 1% elite who wants to own the infrastructure. So that's one of the advantages. It is, as I call it, technology Marxism. I'm not a real Marxist, right? But I like to make technology available to the masses without it being controlled by an elite few. So that's one advantage. So it's basically democratizing AI, but more in the literal sense. Second thing is there is no single point of failure. Absolutely. You had outages in the past, both at DeepSeek and Meta's, OpenAI's model, Claude. But when the model collapses in that ecosystem, one can take over because there's always going to be a there's redundancy baked into the model as well. So that's kind of interesting. And I think the most interesting part of, or the perspective or benefit of decentralized AI is privacy. Because the way these models are trained, it's called federated learning. And so going back to centralized AI, that's called centralized learning, where you have one huge data set on a central location. And it's very efficient, I must say that. It runs very efficient on a bunch of GPUs or TPUs or NPUs and whatever kind of PUs. But from a privacy standpoint, is you don't know what goes on with your data. And with a decentralized model, the models are trained where the data resides. So if you, for instance, include devices that contain data and that contribute to your model, that data doesn't leave your device, your edge device, as it's called. It doesn't leave the device. So the submodel only propagates or shares its weights to the collective, and it doesn't share its data to the collective. So, and that's interesting for instance, if you want to train it on medical records, and if you want to train it between one medical research center and the other. Have you heard of this model called Foresight in the UK?
No, I haven't.
Well, basically it's a large language model, and it's not decentralized, it's centralized, and it's been trained on, I have to do it top of mind, I think it was 57 million NHS records. But it was all centralized. So even though it was anonymized, well, you have to believe it, you have to really trust it that it was anonymized. And the second thing is, even though it is anonymized, you are still able to detect patterns, and through patterns being able to reconstruct a personal identity from that data. So even though it's anonymized, you still have the patterns, you still have the data. So if you're an evil thinker, evil doer, like, Pinky and the Brain, you can still, you can be able, you are able to, create a breach in privacy. So I think that's one of the advantages of decentralized AI.
Sure. Are there any real world applications of decentralized AI at the moment? Are we seeing it in real life, or is it just a theory at the moment?
No, it's not a theory. It's actually been around since, well, the earliest example dates from 2017.
Okay.
I think it was called singularity.net. It still exists.
Yeah.
They boast, I think it's 4,000 plus models, and it's a marketplace. So basically, they offer these models to whomever wants to use those models. And of course, you pay them through, it's tokenized. So you pay them through crypto. So that's basically the way it's remunerated.
Yeah.
So singularity.net's from 2017. Fetch AI, I think it's from a couple of years later. And the latest one is Bitanza. That's an interesting one. And that's a blockchain crypto decentralized ecosystem that boasts a couple of thousand models, but it is in total, it has 10 plus trillion parameters. So if you compare it to the billion range parameters where we see the regular models, so you see that this collective, it's basically a mixture of experts model, basically a collective of all different sorts of models. Collectively, they've got trillions of parameters, so it's a huge model. But the thing is, it hasn't got that big of a PR because big money isn't backing it up. So it's been there longer than OpenAI has. Well, yeah, basically, yeah. So it's around the same time they started with their GPT-1, but they haven't gotten that big of a PR. And they're not making huge amounts of money. And their marketing isn't that smooth as, on the one hand, you're talking about 700 billion tokens, or on the other end, we're talking about LoRa distribution with, these technical terms that nobody understands, which makes it a party for techies instead of something that end users can understand. So yeah, it's they're just not so good on the PR side, that is.
Would you say that's the main reason then, that these decentralized systems aren't as big as the likes of OpenAI and the centralized system?
No, it contributes. It contributes to the fact that they're not well known with the major public. But the thing is, these models have a hard time competing with the centralized models, to be honest.
I see. Okay.
Even though Bitanza is, boasts trillions of parameters, it still is as strong as its weakest link. So there are things like latency. If you're a gamer, then you know that latency kills your pleasure when gaming, right? It's when you shoot. I like to play first-person shooters. So when you shoot, you want to pull the trigger, and it needs to shoot, right? And it doesn't. If it has to wait for a couple of seconds, then you're off, right? So, and the same thing goes for your AI model. If you do submit and you have to wait for seconds for it to inference or to think through your request, it's not that interesting for Harry, Dick, and Tom at the back of their shed, right? So so it's quite inefficient. And second thing, it's complex to coordinate because there's multiple players, and it starts with a gating mechanism. That's like your portal. There's one model that acts as a portal, or your GUI, and that's an algorithm, and that one decides where your request's going to end up at. So, and then who's going to get which part of the remuneration?
Yeah,
Yeah, and of course, if it's crypto, you of course have to have customers that are willing to pay in crypto as well.
of course.
So it is still a bit on the, I wouldn't say dodgy, because I wouldn't associate crypto with dodgy, but if you ask my dad, he would,
Yeah,
he thinks the equivalent of crypto is black money, right? So
yeah, 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 of course.
it's one of those things. So it has trust issues.
I see. So would you say that's probably the biggest issue, the trust issues?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
has trust issues.
yeah, yeah.
But
Sorry, go on.
yeah, but I think still this is the way to go. And I think we've all seen the examples where we've seen centralized AI gone rogue. I
Hmm.
only need reference to Elon Musk's Grok.
Yeah,
I call him Noel Scum, by the way. So it's his nickname I give him in my articles that are right. So I call him
yeah.
Noel Scum. So he's built this huge unhinged chatbot
Hmm.
without any supervision at all. And in a decentralized model, there's a lot of supervision because it's basically democracy that
Hmm.
determines what your model will do.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not connected to this one person. And if you look at it from a political point of view, I'm from the Netherlands, so fortunately, I still am part of the EU.
Hmm.
Um, in the Netherlands, that is, and the EU has made an interesting call that they want to back up open source and decentralized AI.
Okay.
I did some research in the UK as well and hoped that the UK would follow suit,
Yeah.
but that isn't the case. Basically, UK is hedging on two strategies. Is one is building your own foundational
Mhm.
models and becoming the world hub for AI companies. But on the other hand, not negating the fact that there's this other model called decentralized AI. So it's
Yeah.
basically betting onto, basically betting
Right.
onto, yeah, exactly.
Sure.
So, but the EU has made it a strategic effort in setting up a technology stack which is geared towards decentralized AI.
I see. Okay. So is that part of its regulation then?
Well, if you look at the regulation from the EU, that's basically GDPR, the Digital Act, something, and of course the EU AI Act.
Yeah.
There's no direct reference to decentralized AI because it doesn't specify which type of AI it is or which model it is.
Yeah.
The same thing goes for the 2023 white paper on AI in the UK, right? It doesn't specify which AI.
Cool.
So it's all been covered in the legislation. But the programs, the like the chairwoman Ursula something, she wants to free up a few hundred billion in euros, my money,
Yeah.
to sponsor the development of decentralized models. But decentralized is not only the model side that you have to open source and decentralize, it's the
Yeah.
platforms. So the coordination platforms, the operating systems, all the way down to your hardware,
Hmm.
even to the level of your processors, the chipsets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so it's an architecture which is pretty complex and it's not really thought through yet. So again, these are all the the early stage developments that are going on in the era that is holding it back a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's the strategic positioning of the EU not to be dependent on big tech from countries outside of the EU. And I
Yeah.
would think, uh, you know, looking at it from the UK's point of view, it would be a good thing to do that as well.
Sure. So you're mentioning there the EU regulation is reasonably tight. Do you reckon it impacts the potential of tech startups looking to grow in the AI sector?
You mean decentralized AI or the legislation?
I mean the legislation, the regulation.
Oh, okay. Now we're touching.
This is a topic
Yeah.
on its own, I think. But
I know. So I always agitate when it comes to legislation and AI, especially the Dutch government. Sorry to go on and on and on about the Netherlands.
Yeah.
The thing is, we've had the worst AI scandal worldwide in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
It's called this. Have you heard of it? This is subsidies affair. And
I've been looking into it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the thing is, for people that haven't heard of it, it's a few years old, and the tax department of the Netherlands built this profiling system. And this profiling system targeted people that had a non-typical Dutch last name. And that algorithm accused those people of being fraudsters. And so some of them had to pay hundreds of thousands of euros in penalties. Others lost their kids because they couldn't afford paying rent, bread, food. I know of one person, a woman that committed suicide, and there have been multiple cases of suicide because people lost their kids. One of my personal friends is victim of the same tax department as well. And if you think that they'd learn from this, think again, right? So in the Netherlands, we've got this public employment system called UWV, and they recently bought this AI-based matching engine for about 60 million euros. That's a whole lot of money, whereas they paid for like a similar product for about 5 million euros. But they ditched it because it had AI as a prefix. And this model is trained on all of our LinkedIn profiles. But that's illegal. So if you are upholding the law and you are the Dutch government, and I know there's a guy, he's fighting against this hypocrisy of the Dutch government, and they're trying to enforce the AI Act on companies in the Netherlands, force feeding it, but they're not looking internally as to how they're using it themselves, and that's hypocrisy. And I kind of hate that, right? So, and he's like Don Quixote, and I'm Sancho Panza, so I'm helping him out a little bit, but I've written about it a couple of times, and we're hoping to take them to court because it's kind of the Wild West now. But I don't like a two-faced government, right?
No, of course, yeah. But it's also limiting the scope for startups, right? This AI Act.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
and you'll see talent go elsewhere. That's the issue.
Well, the thing is now, talent wants to go from the US to Europe. That is, the scientists. I'm not talking about the model engineers who make 3 to 4 million a year, right? So they're like sticking around. They've got these stock options, which will keep them happy. No, but I think in essence the AI Act isn't all that bad. I know that the UK decided not to mirror it after Brexit, and but decided to let it go for a while since 23. But the thing is, in practice, it is slow to take off. But I like the fact that there are different risk categories, and that there are a few things that are not allowed. in the EU. Things like profiling, like predictive policing, and all these things that undermine democracy. So, for instance, in the US, Palantir, which is a defense contractor annex AI company, that they just got a grant for 40 million US. That's not much for Palantir because I think they've got the most highly valued stock in tech now.
Yeah.
And they've got a contract with ICE, and they're using their tech, their former defense tech, to hunt down these illegal immigrants and to make sure that they're deported in time. And that is using predictive policing technology. So that's basically tapping into cameras, following them online. It's very close to the social crediting system as they have in China. And if you may have heard of this company called Clearview, they were fined, I think it's a few years ago, maybe a year ago, not sure, for about 30 million. Clearview is an American company that is collecting biometric data to sell them to the highest bidder, online and biometric data for policing purposes. And predictive policing, it sounds interesting, right? So it's basically like Minority Report. Could you, if you're a precog, could you predict somebody's going to break the law? And do you want to apprehend him before they even break the law? That's predictive policing. And we're getting very close, especially in the US. So
it's a scary time, I think, personally.
It is, yeah. And whenever I write these articles about big tech, the 1%, scary technology, scary AI, there was always this one black flag, right? So when you see the black flag in my articles, it's about this sort of misuse or abuse of good technology. But fortunately, it's banned in, officially it's banned in the EU. I can't check in, between closed doors. Right. So.
That is the issue. So I was chatting to the head of AI of Cognizant the other day, and he was talking about using AI for good, tech for good. The lights got up in here, sorry. He was talking about using AI for good, whereas this is the other side of it, isn't it? This is using it for potentially bad, but I mean the way they probably sell it, or the way they sell the idea, is predictive policing is preventative.
Yeah, and the thing is, as a person in this domain, I've been working in machine learning, that is, before it became sexy, right?
Yeah.
So I was one of the few people that was tucked away in the back office somewhere, were fed pizzas and because people didn't understand what we were doing, and now we have to do demotivation workshops because people think we can solve every problem.
Yeah.
But anyways, it's it's changed a lot.
Yeah.
Over the course of the year.
That brings me to my next question, actually. What do you think we're heading for within the next 3 to 5 years?
Oh, okay. Very interesting. Recently I did a webinar. It took me, it was an extended one. It took me an hour and a half. It's recorded for anyone interested. It's called The Future of AI. And I separate it into 4 different spaces. So we were in the generation space. I don't have to elaborate on that. We all know the generation space, right? And now we're moving into the productivity space, because generative AI has done a lot of cool things, but it mainly has brought us playthings, right? It
Yes.
likes generating music, your emails, some odd poetry. But it hasn't done any substantial. You know, if you
Hmm.
look at it from afar, hasn't been that revolutionary.
Yeah.
Whereas my beautiful, the models where I fell in love with, the machine learning models,
Mhm.
like the models from, um, uh, you know, the non-neural nets,
Mhm.
they were the bread and butter models, but these models get all the hype and they get all the attention, but they basically not revolutionizing anything.
Yeah.
And well, the industry has invested too much money, trillions nowadays, into AI and startups. And if you combine all the companies that have invested now in AI, you end up in trillions
Hmm.
that nobody wants it to flop. So usually it follows the Gartner hype cycle, right? So from
Yes.
a hype, the inception, to peak of inflated expectations, all the way down to the trough of disillusionment, and then the plateau of productivity. But it's not going to go in all the way down to the trough of disillusionment because the stakes are too high. So we're hopping from one peak to the next. So we're hopping from the generation space to the productivity space.
Hmm.
And the type of AI that is going to dominate the productivity space is going to be agentic AI. And agentic AI is going to have two forms. Is a form for the consumer, that's you and I, and
Hmm.
a form for companies within
Yeah.
companies itself. You know, agentic AI is basically an AI, as we know it from generative AI, but that has a certain level of autonomy in deciding which tools it wants, deciding the processes it needs. It can do some reasoning, and it can fulfill the task, or
Hmm.
it can coordinate a lot of agents, call it a swarm or a crew or a project team in completing a complex task. But it's all in its infancies, right? So it's not really enterprise ready. But I'd say if you've got some budget, play around with it, but do it on the outskirts of your company. Um,
Yeah.
so you'll get the grips of the technology, see what it can and can't do. But I wouldn't want agentic AI to pay out my salary for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
mind hallucinating €1 to 10,000, but I wouldn't mind if it do that the other way around.
Of
So
course.
that's on the business side. But then the consumer side, um, you've got your first steps, baby steps into personal digital assistants. And this particular article is going to air, sorry for the American term, is going to air this week. It is
Uh-huh.
where it's all going. And we've seen the precursors at ChatGPT. ChatGPT has been investing in um, these add-ons called tasks, in extended memory, in a feature called Operator, and I'm now talking about Operator.
Yeah.
The American dial-in operator. But
Yeah. Yeah.
Operator is there's another one's called Browser Use, and Anthropic's got one themselves called Computer Use. It's
Mhm.
where your computer takes over from the user, and in the case of Anthropic, it takes over your entire PC and it clicks away and clicks on apps and it does some maintenance work on your PC. But it's only API based, only available through APIs nowadays, unfortunately. But
Mhm.
Operator from ChatGPT does the same thing, but through the browser. And you can ask it to find your best restaurant that fits your profile, and it just
Yeah.
Googles away, it clicks away, and it'll find you that best restaurant, and it'll book you your table. And the thing
Yeah.
is, Visa a few weeks ago announced the fact that they want to become the payment service provider for agentic AI. So can you now imagine that this operator, which is not agentic, right? So operator is not an agentic AI, but it's a precursor on the consumer side, just like Google Home here, my house, or
Yeah.
Siri on my phone are your precursors to your next level digital assistant, or my Ray-Ban Meta glasses, or my Ray Neo X2 AR AI glasses, which are horrible, by the way. But they are augmented reality glasses with an AI built in. But they're all these separate developments um, with one single end goal is to become your indispensable digital assistant
Yeah.
that acts as a digital twin. And it acts as a digital twin
Mhm.
because it knows all there is to know about you. And that's why OpenAI is investing in this memory. It wants to have to play around with this scheduling or tasks
Yeah.
solution. I've been playing around with a personal assistant, like Jarvis type of personal assistants called
Yeah.
Martin AI. I think it's a bit too expensive though, but it was worth the try. I
Yeah.
spend too much money on these gizmos trying to keep up. You know, it's not
You
good.
get to try them out though.
Um, yeah, it's too much.
Yeah.
And what Martin does, Martin, what OpenAI wants to become, is it can call up a person through the
Mhm.
phone
Mhm.
um, in natural language. It can set an appointment with that person, or it can book you a table. It can
Mhm.
send that person an email. It can schedule something in your agenda. It's really your AI, agentic AI assistant that handles stuff on your behalf. And that's where OpenAI is taking all of this. And the thing
Mm.
is, um, they're not there yet. And Google, with their Astra project and all their developments, are pointing in the same direction as well. Anthropic as well. And of course, Meta wants a piece of the pie as well. And they're
Yeah.
adding glasses to the mix, because wherever you go, you're taking your AI assistant with you. It
Yeah.
started with, Meta Ray-Ban, but maybe this year we'll be seeing Scorpion. It's the next version, right? If they're,
Okay.
but that's going to have an augmented reality feature to go along with that glasses.
Yeah.
But the thing is, in order to get there, they need to know you, which is um, it's a privacy risk, right? So, are you
Yeah.
willing to go that far into providing the AI? And in order for it to work optimal, you need to give it that information, right? It
Mhm.
needs to know your preferences. It needs to
Yeah.
become your digital twin.
Mhm.
But then I think it will have two variants. One variant will be the premium variant, like the 200 pounds a month subscription
Yeah.
variant, where you get it ads free, privacy yours. And then
Yeah.
you've got the free for all version, and that's you're basically your Facebook. I listen to what you're saying.
Yeah.
I watch your every move,
Yeah.
and based on that, I know how to target you with, that's a business model right there. So, yeah, that could be a potential future of where these guys are taking us in the productivity space. So
Mm.
that's only the second space. And then
Yeah.
we've got the third space, which is called the business redesign space.
Mhm.
And in the business redesign space, you'll have AI native companies that are going to start. And
Yeah.
AI native companies are companies that have AI in front, mid, back office, ranging from finance to sales, marketing,
Yeah.
support, and humans are secondary. Well,
Mm.
secondary to none. You of course need a human to collect the money, of course, to collect the margin.
Yeah.
Um, and there are a few markets where you can expect these kind of startups to start. But the thing is, I've seen the talk for about a year and a half, but I haven't seen a AI native company as a startup yet. So, but in say a year's time, there will be one.
You think a year?
Yeah, sure. And
Yeah.
Existing organizations will follow suit. So,
Yeah.
for instance, organizations in the Emirates are investing. I know of two. They're investing heavily in becoming AI first companies. Take, for instance, Etisalat.
Okay.
It's called E-End. So they've done a little rebranding. I know of them because of the telco strategy I was working on recently.
Sure.
And they have invested billions in wanting to become an AI first, not an AI native, right? So an AI first telco operator, where they have their self-healing orchestration, their autonomous network infrastructure, all the way down to their personalized AI. Their anti-Turing models. Everything is governed by traditional machine learning and by generative AI and agentic AI. So,
Wow.
and they want to dominate that particular space. So, and that's going to be the answer to AI native players in the market.
Sure. What do you think that does for jobs then?
Yeah, it's a good question. If you believe the Future of Work report that saw the light a few months ago, it was kind of bleak. So it's the Future of Work is a creation by the World Economic Forum. It has a research span of about 5 years, I guess, to 2030 or 35. I'm not sure anymore. And it says that we're going to lose 40 to 100 million jobs alone to AI. And the thing is, even though I must say that the current state of affairs of AI is still not good enough to replace people. Look at Klarna. Klarna displaced, OpenAI displaced 3,000 people at Klarna. Klarna is the payment service provider from Sweden, right? So they started off with 6,800 staff somewhere in 23. Then they buddied up with OpenAI and they cut the contract. So they axed about 2,000 people. And this year they wanted to bring it down to 2,000. So that's a job cut of 4,000 to 5,000 people. But now they want to bring back the human touch because their customers ain't buying it, right? So people don't want to speak to bots, no matter how good they are. If they can't do the job, then they're worthless, right? A bot that's just there to keep you busy doesn't cut it. So, and the agentic AI can be so beautiful in theory, but if it hallucinates 1 in 6 times, and then it's not going to work. So I think in order for the industry to really fulfill its promise, which I hope is going to take a long, long time, because my personal moral compass is that I personally don't like to be involved in projects that include the sacking of people. So, because in the end, you're like an Ouroboros biting your own tail, right? So automation is okay. Augmentation is fine. And automation makes people want to, grow, need to learn new skills. And I'm pro that, right? I'm pretty much in favor of competition and, continuous learning and not sitting back and relaxing the ride or enjoying the ride. But, as we call it in Dutch, it's actually a German expression, rücksichtslos, cutting down jobs for the sake of cutting down jobs is going to bite you in the ass in the end, right? So,
and that's where the actual value of human connection will increase, right?
Exactly. And Well, it's a good thing that you mentioned this. As one of my customers that I enjoy working with is Victim Support Europe
Hmm.
and Victim Support the Netherlands, and they've got a good moral compass
Hmm.
because these guys, guys in the UK, guys in Germany, they all work together to support people who've been the victim of a crime.
Yeah.
And together we are looking at how AI can support victims. So we've got a mantra. One of them is we don't want our victims to become victimized by our AI.
Hmm.
And that means a lot because we're now looking at introducing a chatbot.
Yeah.
But that is a risk if you're not looking into guardrails. You don't want it to hallucinate. You don't want it to start
Yeah.
preaching suicide if it detects a person to be in a mental unstable state.
Hmm.
So you have to have stringent rules what it can do, what it cannot do.
Yeah.
And we call it compassionate AI design.
Sure.
So we're using AI basically as an enabler to free up time for human workers to spend time talking to their other humans.
Sure.
So we are using agentic AI, we are using generative AI, but for
Hmm.
the sake of freeing up time so that they won't have to spend transcribing meetings,
Hmm.
um, you know, going through tedious workflows, which is going to take them, transcription takes them 30 minutes after each call. Workflows takes them another 30 minutes after each call, and a call takes them an hour. So they can spend 100% more on talking to victims
Yeah.
instead of doing chores. And
Hmm.
that's where the real value lies with AI.
Yeah.
And that's what I call compassionate AI design. So yeah,
That's, yeah,
is
that's perfect, Marco. So, if there's one key thing that our listeners could take away from this, what would it be?
I think
Because
you
we've
have to.
covered a lot.
Sorry, come again?
Because we've covered a lot here.
Yeah, we did. So we start with decentralized AI and ended up with compassionate AI
Yeah.
design.
Yeah.
Um, so never forget the human aspect
Mm.
of it all. That's, I think, the most important thing. And I don't want to be wishy-washy, right? So
No.
it's not being wishy-washy, but it's you don't want to end up in a dystopian world which is governed by machines, where a machine negotiates your energy contract on your behalf
Hmm.
and does your work on your behalf. And
Hmm.
what is left for us, apart from begging for a universal basic income?
Yeah.
All
I
right.
think that's it. That's a good place to leave it. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Mark.
All right, Callum. It was a pleasure to talk to you again.
It's a pleasure to talk to you as well. I'm sure our listeners would have learned a lot as well from this conversation. So thank you so much.
All righty.
Cheers. Bye then.
Cheers, bro.